Today we're going to be looking at repairing my e-bike. All the parts I need today are the crank Allen key to get my pedals off, the crank puller to pull the pedals off, and then this guy here, he gets that big lock nut. There's a spare one, and it gets it off and then everything comes apart. Wind this one out, wind this one in, and then as you now crank this in with a spanner, it's going to pull it out. That wasn't very graceful, but I've got one hand. Okay, we're going to be looking into this area here. So we're going to pull the whole thing out. I'm going to have to cut my cable ties, disconnect my electronics so that everything comes free. This one here is battery power. This one here is the actual throttle. Sorry, not throttle. This one here is the speed sensor. This one here I think was throttle, which I disconnected. So on first inspection, this should be covered up by this plate here, and the shaft has pushed through. So that means that the circlips that hold that shaft in place on the inside of the motor have come off, which means that this motor has to come apart. So it is actually the motor shaft area, which is this part here, all through here. So this is going to have to come off and pull it apart and see how we go. So it appears that the ratchet system is okay. And that drives this, okay? So I think this is evidence too that when I'm pedaling without the motor, I'm actually driving the motor because it's just directly engaged here. There's no solenoid kicking in or out. So that's why it's so hard to ride this bike without the motor. Anyway, this is proud. This is supposed to be recessed in. You can see there that that's just way too far out. So I would say a circlip has come off, which is interesting because that happened around about 3 months into the brand new motor. The circlip at the bottom that retains this, we'll open this up and I'll show you shortly, but that came off and I had to open this up way back then after 3 months, if that, of owning it. And I know that I assembled it correctly and put all the circlips back in. So it just seems to be an inherent problem. So we'll open it up and have a look. So I've opened the motor up. Now this shaft here from the motor stator and stuff goes down in there and sits in a bearing at the bottom, and that drives this nylon gear here, which goes through and is the output here. That's the other end of it, and that's sitting nice and flush now, whereas before it was right out. Now the reason that it was proud on the other end was because, I'll just get a pointer here, this circlip here had let go, and so it was floating around, and this of course was, now it was all down and all out of whack. So I've put in a nice firm one that covers the actual nylon bearing, so that should hold. But I would say that is without a doubt the weakness of this motor. So a circlip usually just holds something in place where there's no force really on it. It just needs to hold something there. There's no actual force. But I actually think that what's going on here is because these are helical gears, as they spin, you actually get a driving force in a direction. I've gone to a bearing place to pick up some circlips because the ones that I've got on order are just taking too long. And I'm actually now not confident that they are the right ones that I ordered. So I went and got these ones, and they are internal 12.7, external 15.7. The shaft that I'm dealing with is 14. The external that I refer to is this bit here anyway, which is fine as long as it covers. So that's your external. It's the internal that's really, really important because that's where it's got to clip around the shaft and remain tight. And they are 1 millimeter in thickness. So that internal part there, where my thumb is, or finger is, 12.7, external 15.7. Wouldn't matter if that was 16 or 17. It just means that it would stick out over the top of this thing better, that's all. So that doesn't matter too much. I did replace that bearing down in there. You can't push that bearing through, so I used bread and water to force that bearing out. Getting it in is always really, really challenging. That's a new one there. You've got to make sure really that you use a tool that actually pushes on the actual outer part of the bearing, not of the inside part. And I used my trusty vise for that. Just making sure that you're at right angles when you go in is important. This guy here goes into there. I did actually remove the stator from there, put it in and give it a turn to make sure that it was all frictionless. I'm actually not going to load this up with grease this time. I'm just going to put a small amount of grease. I think that the grease gets hot, becomes gummy, and then starts to offer more resistance. I've gone through all of the bearings in here. I've pulled all this apart, re-lubricated. That all appears to be good. So I don't think that there's any issues in there with the ratchet system. I think the problem is here. I knew that something else was nagging me that I wanted to share, and that's these holes here. As I have taken this apart so many times, it actually starts to take a toll on this wiring. So what I've done is I've re-sleeved this with thermal, which makes them bigger and makes it harder to get them through these holes. So I actually just bored them out with my trusty drill press. And there's my trusty vise that I just love because I restored it to get that bearing in. So what I'm going to do now is put it all back together. I'm actually going to keep it clean. Like I said, minimal amount of grease. Make sure that I put my gaskets back in. The reason I don't care about the diameter of this is because that's a rubber gasket. It should be sealed anyway. And I actually don't ride my e-bike in the wet because I am not prepared to come off. So let's get it back together and let's see how we go. Okay, so the motor is now back together. So I am going to now go with a degree of confidence and fit it back onto the bike and see how we go. Okay, so the BBS02b engine is all back together. I have not put the guard on. The guard is sitting there because it's threaded and damaged after the little shaft made its way out through the housing. Now, that's not supposed to be like that. I got to get a new housing, but it ate its way through. That's what that gear did. But that's okay for now. As long as I don't ride with long pants, I should be okay here for now. But I'll order a new guard and I'll order a new gear cover. This is a 44 tooth. I'm actually going to step it down. I'm going to go smaller to a smaller tooth gear there. So I now have it on my trusty hanger. So I just hang the bike from a rafter, turned it on, and I've put it up to speed 8. It's got a full battery, so it should go. Fantastic. that chafing sound is the brake pad. That's where maybe the throttle goes onto there, which I don't run a throttle on this bike. It is just pedal power assisted with the motor set to the correct speed so that it's compliant. So that's ready now for a good test ride. It's really humid today. Gotta get some new tyres for it. Colleague at work has put me onto some really good tyres. Thank you, Andrew. And I'm going to get hold of those, fit those at the same time when I fit this new stuff, and then it all should be ready to go again. So I'm really pleased with that. I thought it was a bigger issue, but the new circlips appear to have worked. We'll see how they hold, and the advice is step down how many teeth I've got here so there's not such a load on it, and don't put load on it, keep it revving high. I hope this video's helped, and there'll be more to come, I suspect.